So, so yeah, the title of the talk is Loving Kindness, Freedom of the Heart. So, it might be a good idea just to sort of say what I mean by freedom, because I think it's a word that obviously means different things, I imagine, to different people. But I suppose for me, the kind of freedom that I feel that I've experienced as a consequence, actually, of my meditation practice has been becoming more capable of thinking, acting, and responding to my experience, to my situation, thinking about my situation in a way that is in accordance with my own deepest heartfelt values. So, not entangled in fear or ill will or craving. Able to respond according to, my deepest values. So that for me is freedom. And we were just talking about it a bit earlier, Liz and I was thinking maybe, that kind of freedom is possible anywhere. So you could think that, Nelson Mandela, even when he was in prison, was exercising a kind of freedom by responding to his imprisonment on the basis of his own deeply felt values. And in that sense, he was able actually to overcome his captors. So there's something very, very powerful about this kind of freedom, I think. And I think that is what is being made possible when we are engaging in Buddhist meditation. So that's freedom. And then the other term is the heart. So what do I mean by the heart? I mean, on a sort of a concrete level, it's just this organ that resides in the chest, and it's the seat of circulation. It pumps the blood around the body and it gives you a pulse, doesn't it? And it's a hard-working organ, isn't it? It's constantly sort of pumping this blood around the body. But we often use the word heart to express things connected with values, desires, wishes. We talk about the heart wish, or we say something is at the heart of, at the core of something. We talk about the heart being the core of something. We think of courage in terms of the heart. I think courage is comes from the Latin for heart. So the heart, the term heart, we often use it metaphorically. But when I am talking about freedom of the heart, I'm not really speaking purely metaphorically when I use this word heart. I mean something much more than that. So the heart is, in the terms that I'm discussing anyway, it's an energy center. It's an energy center. And traditionally, it's one of 7 energy centers. So there's the first energy center or chakra is down there in the perineum. And then you've got one at the hara, which is just below the belly button. Then there's one at the solar plexus. And then the 4th is the heart. And then you've got the throat, the third eye, and the crown of the head. So it's an energy center. And each of these energy centers have got their own specific energy. And I would encourage you to explore that in your own experience. So you can get all sorts of books about chakras and things like that, which are great fun to read. But actually, why not just do your own bit of examination of what happens at these different energy centers? Can you feel them? Can you explore them? Do they prompt you in any way? I love the notion or the fact that the heart executes a cardiac twist, So it kind of wrings itself out like a towel. So it's sending blood around the body in two different directions, and I can't really explain. It's a vortex. So that's pretty darned energetic. And I think that's what makes us alive and ticking, is this vortex, this double vortex that the heart is producing. The blood going around the lungs in one direction, around the rest of the body in another direction. But yeah, more than that, we have feelings that arise in the heart. And in Buddhism, traditionally, the mind is not only a sense organ, it's also located in this heart area. So the mind, traditionally, is located in the heart area. The word for mind in the ancient Buddhist languages is chitta, and that means kind of heart mind. So, and I think I didn't really fully understand this when I first started learning to meditate. And it's quite an interesting, we often talk about this in, Triratna circles, in Buddhist circles, about chitta, the heart, heart mind. I think in Western sort of scientific, materialist, rationalistic thinking, the head and the heart are sort of juxtaposed. And we think of the mind, reason, as being located in the brain. Whereas the emotions, the feelings, the irrational, illogical things, if they're located anywhere, they're sort of located in the heart. So broadly, sometimes, particularly when we're being lazy, we think of the logical, reasonable head side as being good, and the illogical, irrational, over-emotional heart side as being bad. So that's a bit of a crude way of expressing it, but I think we do fall into that at times. I certainly think that I have, in the past, had a tendency to do that. And in fact, when I first started learning to meditate, I was in my 30s, and I'd had a number of experiences in my life where I would fall into quite spectacularly obsessive, kind of almost addictive, romantic love affairs, sexual romantic love affairs. And I would become quite consumed by these. And I sort of knew that, I think I always knew that this was occurring because of what you could call an imbalance between head and heart. But as I learned to meditate, and as I learned to come to rest in my heart a bit more and trust it, I began to really understand that what had been happening was that I was using my head, as it were, to overrule my heart as a default position. And every now and then, my heart would just break out and attach itself to something outside of me and try and get itself met, get its needs met. And so I would fall in love hopelessly with the wrong kind of people, usually. It was very painful. It was very embarrassing at times. And it was deeply frustrating because it always ended in failure. And I think it was ethically problematic because I was objectifying this person. And sometimes I think they deeply resented it. So, and the Metta Bhavana, the practice of meditation, the practice of the Metta Bhavana has given me a real opportunity to get a handle on that. And actually, as part of that journey, I did become aware of the importance of kneeling, of taking the knee, as it were, taking both knees actually, and putting my head on the ground 3 times, having my hands outstretched and kneeling and asking for guidance, actually. Surrendering this willful head and learning to trust the heart. And what I noticed was when I did that, if I went to a puja or some kind of, or if I just simply prostrated myself in front of a Buddha Rupa at the end of a meditation where I'd been really consumed by one of these obsessions, I noticed that it wasn't easy to let go, but my heart was lighter. My heart was lighter afterwards. And it's been hugely helpful for me to engage in this practice of the Metta Bhavana. And I can say that I haven't had any serious romantic obsessions for quite some time now. I'm still a complete bumbling idiot, however. I don't want you to think that I have somehow achieved some great insight into how to live a pain-free life, because I still make mistakes all the time. But I am a much happier, more kind of integrated, steadier human being. And I sort of feel like I'm pointing in the right direction. I'm oriented. And I think this practice, the Metta Bhavana, has been a very key area of guidance in achieving that. So in a couple of minutes or so, I'll lead us in a period of the Metta Bhavana. And I encourage you. So last week I was talking about direct experience and about the importance of really becoming aware of the body, establishing this absorption. And of course, all of that is very important in the Metta Bhavana as well. So we can engage with the body and the breath just in the same way that we would in the mindfulness of breathing, in order to come into a really sort of vivid and in the moment awareness of your experience, because that's what we're exploring in this meditation. So don't think you know exactly what you're going to encounter. So when you're doing the first stage of the practice, where you bring yourself to mind, make sure that you're not just assuming you know what this self is. Why not take the attitude of just inquiring into, well, who is it? Who's here? And how are they feeling? Don't assume you know yourself. consult your direct experience in order to become aware of this experience of self in the moment. That experience may be very, very subtle, but that's fine. You can sit with a certain emptiness and wait for the information to come to you, rather than slap it on from your imagination, from your head. I hope that makes sense. And then in the second stage, we expand our awareness to take in a good friend and see if you can notice, who is this person that you think of as your good friend? How do you know them? How well do you know them? Are there ways, subtle and less subtle, in which you're quite simply projecting yourself into your friend? Do you know where you end and they begin? Real love, real respect is the acknowledgement of the individual uniqueness of another person. So there may be things about them that resonate with you, but also they've got a right to their own sort of unique existence. So we're expanding and we're just reflecting on self and good friend. And then maybe in the third stage, when we again just open our hearts a little more to bring in the neutral person, well, we can reflect on, is there ever a neutral person? What do we bring? What do we project into these strangers that we meet? What if you see somebody coming towards you? What kind of assumptions do you make about them? Maybe related to their body size or shape. Maybe they're of a different racial type from you. Maybe they are of a particular gender, or maybe the way they dress even can sort of prompt all sorts of ideas and assumptions. And it can be so helpful just to notice those without any kind of judgment, without any censoring. Just notice. And remember what I was saying about freedom being responding according to our own deepest values. So, do we always do that? I think that's an aspect of mindfulness. Non mindfulness is when we're making a default reaction that might not actually be in accordance with our deepest values. And then when we become more mindful, we can temper our response. We can open our hearts. We can be less judgmental. And then in the enemy stage, what we are being given the opportunity to do is to come into relationship with our own frustration, ill will that we're projecting onto this difficult person, the person that we find difficult. Of course, they are not objectively difficult. It may well be that what this person represents for you is some kind of transgression of a value that is very important to you. So it's very important to identify that and cherish it, celebrate it in yourself, and see if you can detach it from this person. They're probably not intentionally threatening it or harming it. They're doing it out of unawareness, if they're doing it actually at all in reality. So yes, freedom of the heart emerges from this kind of self-knowledge and letting go. And we don't have to do anything, actually. We can allow ethical action to arise spontaneously out of our sort of self-awareness. And it will do. It might surprise you. like the man who maybe was surprised when he saved the demonstrator who was on the other side of the dispute. I'm not explaining that very well. You either know it or you don't. Anyway, I think it's time to meditate. So do set yourself up, find your seat, and I'll just guide us through the 5 stages. I won't say too much. Just beginning by taking a couple of deeper breaths. Connecting with the breath and the body, taking the time you need actually to scan through the body, establishing a level of absorption and concentration, mindfulness of the moment, the body. Allowing the awareness to soften and relax the whole body. Lower half is heavy and stable. Letting the spine rise up, shoulders drop back. Just letting the chest open, allowing the heart to emerge and expand, lengthening and loosening the back of the neck, softening the face. Perhaps just noticing how the belly rises and falls with the breath. Spending a few moments connecting with this heart center. Are you aware of the beating of your heart? Are there any sensations? The Metta Bhavana. So in the first stage, quite simply becoming aware of this experience of self. Inhabiting the body, having thoughts and feelings. and setting the intention to be kindly, curious, open-minded, and open-hearted as you explore this experience. What's it like to be me? And just affirming to yourself that it's okay to connect with your deepest wish, freedom, freedom from suffering, freedom to be happy, freedom to be at peace. You can just be with the sensations, the feelings, the emotions without getting too tangled up in stories. Just appreciate the vividness of your experience. May I be well, happy, free from suffering. And now expanding your awareness to take in a good friend, using your imagination to bring them to life in your experience. There's bound to be aspects of this good friend that you don't know, that you may discover, that's waiting to be discovered. Seeing if you can open your heart to that possibility. There may be things that you know about your friend unconsciously that's waiting to become conscious. We take in so much information, we don't always process it. So again, just keeping an open mind and open heart, reflecting on your friend, wishing for their well-being, being alert for what you might not quite have caught about them, deepening your awareness of this extraordinarily complex being who's not just here to make your life better. They have their own life as well. May they be well, happy, free from suffering, free to change and grow. So the heart can hold awareness of yourself and the other. The heart can always open a little more, always expand a little more. It's just a question of softening, being receptive to your experience, and remembering your intention. And then in the third stage, bringing to mind the so-called neutral person, the familiar stranger. Just seeing if you can bring them to mind. Notice what you've already noticed, but perhaps haven't fully become conscious of. Maybe the smile, the way the hair falls, something about the clothing. We make all sorts of decisions about people based on how they look, how they move. Might not be fully conscious of those decisions. Here, we can explore without judging, checking if the assumptions we're making do in fact accord with our deepest values. Refreshing our intention to wish this person to be well, happy, free, free from suffering, from fear. And able to change and grow and develop. And now moving into the fourth stage, just expanding a little more to take in a person that you find difficult. Just noticing how that manifests in your imagination, this difficulty. So there's likely to be an edge, perhaps of ill will, perhaps more than an edge, or aversion. And it's completely okay. It's totally normal to have these feelings. The important thing is to notice upon what basis they are arising. Perhaps there is something in you that is being threatened, some value that you cherish. Acknowledging that, taking responsibility for that, seeing if you can nevertheless wish this person to be well, happy, free from fear, suffering, able to change and grow. Wish that for them. See if you can imagine it for them. The imagination is extremely powerful. Not forgetting to stay connected to the breath, the body, noticing the sensations of the heart center. And then moving into the fifth stage of the practice. Recalling yourself, your good friend, the neutral person, and the difficult person. And then expanding to take in your fellow meditators this evening. Wishing them to be well. And then again, maybe taking in the other people in your house or building or street, probably not meditating, but all wishing to be well and happy. Do you wish that for them? Can you? And the people of Cambridge and beyond, all the creatures, just seeing how far you can expand your well-wishing. Not just the people that you like, but the people you find difficult all across the globe. Wishing for them that they wake up with a sense of their own deepest values being possible. May they be well and happy. May they be free from suffering. Now, just for the last few moments, letting go of that effort. Just sitting, absorbing the benefits of the practice. And as I ring the bell to mark the end of the meditation, in your own time, when you're ready, opening your eyes and coming out of the meditation posture. So, we've only got a few minutes left, but I do wonder if anybody has any comments or questions about that, or about anything that I might have said this evening. Liz will let me know if there is anything. Well, perhaps not. I actually must say, I had quite a strong sense of you being here this evening, even though I'm bizarrely looking into a computer screen, and I've moved the YouTube window out of my line of sight because I don't want to look at myself. So I can't see you, but I definitely have a real sense of your presence. So thanks so much for coming, and for making yourselves known to us. Oh, hang on.
Anna's just commented that it's a lovely meditation, and Becca's saying how lovely it is to meditate with all of you. And sent a big heart.
Oh, yeah, that's really nice. Thank you, Becca and Anna. Yeah. Yeah, I love it as well. It's an extraordinary practice, actually. It can so often feel quite mundane. I mean, there have been many times when I've sat down to this practice and then I've got up, 40 minutes later, and I've thought, well, what was that all about? Why do I bother? But actually, even those very pedestrian sits are part of the whole thing. So I just encourage you to just keep coming back to it, keep exploring.
I was just thinking if you had any kind of top tips on things that help people to become more in contact with the heart, because you can talk a lot about it, about getting into contact with sort of what's going on there. But I was thinking of how do you, if you're not having much kind of a direct experience about what's going on in your heart centre because you're used to ignoring it for 40 years, then it can be quite difficult to just suddenly listen to it.
Yeah.
So obviously meditation is a way of slowing down and getting in contact with that. But are there other things that you would sort of give as top tips for people for?
So Liz is asking whether I've got any top tips for coming into connection with the heart. And I think in a way, it's okay not to feel very much. it's really actually, don't worry if you're not feeling very much. Um, the important thing is to be keeping the channels open. And then what will happen is that one day you'll be quite surprised by what manifests. It's a bit like, trying to learn to ride a bike. You think, you try a few times, you think, well, I'm never going to get this. And then you give up and then it happens. So I think always cultivating a direct experience, whether it's of your big toe or your knee or your shoulder or your nose or your ear and the heart, just keep sort of exploring, and it'll gather into something. And it's feelings, it's never quite what you think it's going to be. That's the other thing, is try not to anticipate. Try not to have a preconceived idea, actually, of what you're going to experience. I think that's a key skill in meditation generally. Yes. Okay, so we're coming to the end. I think just about everybody who's here is already a generous donor to Cambridge Buddhist Centre. So I'm not going to do the usual pitch. I'm just going to say thank you very much. It makes a huge difference to us. It's extraordinarily helpful, particularly if you're giving regularly a standing order. That makes our job so much easier to do, to plan into the future. And that is what we're doing now. We are planning. We're beginning to think about how to go into the autumn with all the social distancing measures that we've got to observe. And we're thinking about how we might be able to open up the building to people and run retreats and all sorts of things. So do continue to watch this space, and I very much look forward to the day when I can see you in person. So is there anything I've forgotten, Liz, that I need to say? Okay, so I'm just going to say good night. Thanks so much again, and maybe see you next week. Oh, I have got to switch it off now.